Congressman, to switch gears, I want to ask you about the Epstein files. So you and Thomas Massie have led the charge in trying to get the Epstein files released, and you have hit basically a brick wall of Republican obstinance where Mike Johnson, at the behest of Donald Trump, is trying to come up with every single excuse in the book as to why they can't release them. And then you also have this thing with Adelita Grijalva, who just won her race, and she's supposed to be seated. You've had Republicans get seated literally a day after they get elected, and they are stonewalling sitting Adelita Grijalva. Why? Because she's the magical 218th vote to get the Epstein files released. So tell everybody where that's at right now and what it's been like for you to witness this right in front of your face in real time. I mean, this is like your legislation that we're talking about, or whatever, you know, the procedural thing is, and they're just blocking it and you're watching it happen.
It's so blatantly corrupt, and I wish more people were just covering it, because there are two things going on. There's the shutdown of the government, which is because they're not willing to extend the tax credit for the Affordable Care Act, and people's premium literally November 1st is going to double if they're on the exchange. But then there's like the shutdown in Congress, which is what people haven't fully grasped. And that has nothing to do with the ideological debate. Usually when there's a shutdown, Congress is in session. Now, why does it matter? Because Congress is saying, well, we should pay our troops. We should pay essential workers like air traffic controllers, even while the government is shut down. There is no vote to do that. And the only reason Congress has been on this vacation for 1 month where we have not had a single vote is because Mike Johnson does not want to vote on the Epstein files. It is because Johnson knows that the day we have Congress in session, Adelita Grijalva will be sworn in. We will get 218 signatures, Massie and me, and that will force a vote 7 days later on the Epstein files. And he's getting away with this. Like the American people don't realize that we literally aren't paying our troops and aren't paying federal workers because of this Epstein file issue. And why is it that they fear it so much? Now, it's not just, okay, it's going to embarrass possibly Trump's friends in Mar-a-Lago. They know that there are going to be 50 to 60 MAGA Republicans who will vote for Massie and my bill the day it comes on the floor. This is the first time that Donald Trump would have had that kind of defection since he came down the escalator in 2015. And I believe it'll be the first sign of him being a lame duck. And so they know the consequences of this vote.
Are you concerned, like I am, that they're buying time to basically do what the Project Veritas video proved, which is pull out of the Epstein files everything that makes Republicans look bad and keep in everything that makes Democrats look bad? Because there was that video, I think it was from Project Veritas, James O'Keefe released it, talking to some FBI or DOJ official, and they said, like, we're basically cleaning them up to get out all the stuff Republicans did and leave in all the stuff Democrats did. Does that concern you that if/when they do get released, they've had enough time to like sort of clean it up?
I think they've already tried to do that. But look, we have the lawyers, the survivors who've seen the files. So there are people outside of the Trump folks who've seen these files and will be able to sound the alarm if they do that. They're trying two things. One, they're trying to just delay the clock, hoping that they can outlast it till some Republicans get seated and they get back the majority. Now, theoretically, I guess they could shut down Congress for 3 months or something, and that's one of the strategies. The second strategy is let's just get Americans to not care about this issue. Then maybe they'll forget, maybe they'll move on. The problem is this is something that it's not like Thomas Massie and I are driving this. I did a tweet and Thomas Massie just texted me saying, hey, Robert, really, I know we focus on the war powers resolution. We just did this Iran thing. Why don't we do this Epstein thing together? And I didn't think it was going to take off. Massie didn't think it was going to take off in the way it has. But when we heard the survivors, this has struck a nerve. So this is not like Massie and me driving this with some PR team. This is organic. The American people, many of them, their base care about this. And that's why they're not going to get it to just disappear.
The other thing that I worry about with the refusal to seat Congresswoman-elect Grijalva is that this is also a bit of a trial run for what they could get away with after the midterm elections. And so, you have that. You have Trump passed a bunch of executive orders, one in particular that requires states to send their voter rolls into the DOJ. He's put some total psychos, election denial psychos who are at the forefront of Stop the Steal. New York Times actually just had a great report on all of this. Obviously, you have all the gerrymandering efforts going on. You have the Supreme Court very likely to strike down part of the, Voting Rights Act that would again take potentially another dozen seats of potential Democratic seats away, or existing Democratic seats away. You've got troops in the street. You've got basically a red state invasion of blue cities already. You have Trump threatening to use the Insurrection Act. I'm very concerned, very concerned. And this is a guy who tried to steal an election already. So we literally can't put anything past him. I just wonder how you're thinking through those things and how you see the threats to the midterm election specifically.
They're very serious. I mean, look, these people are not dumb. They see that you have a multiracial majority in America that wants things like Medicare for all, that wants a living wage, that wants to live with respect with people of different faiths, different backgrounds. And it's threatening to both the billionaire class, and it's threatening to people who see, as Trump says all the time, their way of life under threat. And so why is it that they have an allowance to do these things? Because Trump is saying, I'm fighting for your way of life. I'm trying to entrench a counter-majority power structure. It's by design that they're trying to do this. They see where the energy is. They see Mamdani winning. They see Plattner's numbers. They see Bernie's crowds with AOC. They see the progressive energy. And I think the only thing that is going to stop them is the kind of no king social movements that we've seen. When David Brooks is calling for mass movements and mass protests, that something has changed in this country. Like that, the credit I give to any success that we've had is not those of us in Congress. It's the fact that people are coming out, they're standing up, they're organizing, they're being heard. And I think that if we continue to do that, then we will prevail.
I think we got to up the ante, though, because it was incredible seeing the millions of people who came out for the No Kings protests. We live in this tiny, very Republican town, and there were even protests there. The actual town next door had an even larger protest. It matters. And I think it matters a lot for even people who oppose Trump, just to see those numbers and feel like they're not alone and reclaim some of their power. But I'm also under no illusion that any of that is actually going to coerce the Trump administration to change course. So I saw Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago, calling for a general strike. That ultimately is that is the power that the people have, right? To withhold their labor, right? Or withhold their consumer cash. So I wonder, how you're thinking about those things and how we can up the ante in terms of the tactics that are deployed, understanding that with such a decimated labor movement, it makes it much harder actually to do those sorts of things. But I just, I don't know that we're at a place where protest movements are enough, because we've had some of the largest protests in history, if not the largest protests in history. And I don't see it slowing them down one iota.
Well, look, I'm all for taking action. In fact, I made this point to our caucus that, we have a shutdown, but it can't just be speeches. We've got to take action. What are we doing? Even if it's every day, we're going outside the White House, or what is it that we can actually do in a given day that shows that we're fighting, even if it's symbolic. But I'm open for all these kind of things. I do think winning will matter. I think Zoran winning, and frankly, even Virginia and New Jersey, the governors winning, and Prop 50 passing in California will show that this is not total defeatism, that the Democrats are not moribund, that we can actually come back and actually win. But I'm open to all kinds of actions, and I think that the thing that the actions do is one gives comfort to the folks who are the more timid folks of the business class, or some of the people running organizations or law firms, and says, look, there are people willing to literally take risks with their own physical safety and risk being jailed unjustly to protest. You can stand up too. And then winning, I think, will show that people who are just opportunistic, they may want to jump on the bandwagon of Democrats because the pendulum is swinging back.
So I read the other day that Trump has withheld $27 billion from blue states in violation of the Impoundment Control Act, and he's withheld less than $1 billion from red states. So this is clearly like, you know, political punishment of the states that don't support him and don't agree with him. And again, wildly illegal. And unfortunately, if the courts say, hey, you can't do that, there's no guarantee that they'll follow it. I mean, sometimes they've abided by court decisions, other times they haven't. They've just blown them off. So my question for you is, I read an article the other day in The Guardian, actually, where they explained a way to fight back against this is to basically have the blue states, you pay taxes, but the state holds the federal taxes in basically an escrow fund. And they say this money is not going to be released to the federal government unless and until Trump releases the $27 billion that by law has to go to the blue states. And so it's a way of saying, like, look, we'll pay the taxes. That's why the money was paid and it's sitting in escrow. But you need to uphold your end of the bargain, because why would we pay taxes to the federal government if the federal government doesn't give us the services that we're supposed to get by law? Are we at that point now, Congressman, where we should be talking about innovative and hardline solutions like this? Because from where I'm sitting, to me, it looks kind of like a no-brainer, because he's shredded the Constitution in so many different ways that we need to find ways to fight back that effectively forces their hand.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't call for not paying federal tax, but if there's some escrow that says, look, this is money that we are owed in terms of the state, and that you are violating the Constitution, and that portion of it needs to be in escrow to be dispersed based on the Constitution, that seems to me a constitutional way to do it. So what I argue is that we need aggressive, robust, assertive action, but we should still be within the constitutional bounds. Like, I don't think we need to become a lawless party, but we should be not a party that's just giving speeches and not thinking innovatively about how best to stand up to an administration that will take as much power as they can get. There is no line. There is basically, they will take as much power and will push until we push back. And I do think, the party's in a better place today than we were 6-7 months ago, where you had people like voting for the Lake and Riley Act, which is now they're all complaining about ICE. Well, you voted. You created the culture that made this possible. You voted for Lake and Riley that said deport people without due process. And now you're complaining that they're basically exercising the authority that you gave them?
Yeah, that is a fantastic point. And talk to me a little bit about the shutdown. I saw a theory floated that the plan is from Democrats to basically push the shutdown till November 1st and then be like, oh, well, it's too late to extend the ACA subsidies. We tried and the Republicans blocked it, and then vote to reopen the government. And I wonder if, so I don't know.
Well, that's a losing strategy.
I agree. I think that's a lame strategy.
Well, especially because Trump's numbers are going down by the day. It's not the Democrats that are being blamed for the shutdown. And,
Republicans are being blamed for it. But first, your reaction tells me that was not something that you've heard internally in Democratic Party circles. But, how do you think that this ends up going? And what is the latest point, by the way, that the ACA subsidies could get extended and, avoid this cliff we're facing at the end of the year?
Well, they could get extended at any time and have some of it be retroactive. I mean, I think that some of the premiums people would start to get hit in November 1st, but that doesn't mean we can't mitigate some of the damage. But I think if we get anything, if we concede without getting something concrete, that the base is just going to lose total confidence in the Democrats. I mean, like, we're finally, as a party, rebuilding some trust and saying, okay, wow, the Democrats seem so on message. They're all talking about healthcare. And as Kyle said, they're actually breaking through, and they actually are willing to stand firm, and they're actually united. And then if we just wave the white flag and get some symbolic concession, I do think you're then going to see a revolt amongst the leaders. So I'm sure there are people suggesting that, because the Democrats always get antsy in these kind of fights, but it would be disastrous for not just for our party, but for the leadership.
I saw a poll that because of this move, this shutdown, fighting for extending the ACA subsidies, support for Democrats went up 20 points just over this strategy, because you said, hey, reverse the Medicaid cuts and allow the ACA subsidies to continue. So, from an outside perspective, Congressman, it is working. It's working and having the exact desired effect. And at some point, I mean, Trump may huff and puff and everything, but I mean, at some point, they're going to have to give on something. We've never seen a scenario where it's like, all right, we're not going to negotiate, but we actually mean that, and like you have to bend exactly to what we want. It's like, no, if you need 6 or 7 Democratic votes to get this through, by definition, you have to concede on something. And the fact of the matter is the Democratic ask was not extreme. If anything, you have Democrats who are bending over backwards to help Republican voters because 77% of the Obamacare subsidies go to Republicans.
And basically say, don't give the money to Argentina. Give $40 billion.
Right.
I don't want to make this point again. The $40 billion that this guy is giving to the corrupt leader in Argentina, who basically has ruined that economy because he had a family scandal of favoritism to a family member, and has been ruining the economy by firing government employees. Sound familiar? And we're giving him $40 billion that we could extend the Affordable Care Act tax credit for every person on that for 1 year for that amount of money. So don't tell me it's about money. This is a issue actually that helps Trump's voters. My guess is that they realize if they have any sense, they don't want the premiums going up on their watch. And it would be foolish, frankly, if I were them, I'd say give them a 2-year extension so we don't have the extensions ending right before the midterm. So I actually think the Democratic Party has all of the leverage here, both substantively and politically. And we should not snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, which the Democrats have done, unfortunately, too often. But we've got to toughen up. The biggest thing people want is strength in leadership, and I think they saw that in Bernie. They're now finally seeing some of that in our party.
Yeah, and to take it back to the first thing we were talking about, the fact that Democrats forced a conversation on healthcare put your squawk box friends on the back foot.
Right.
Because suddenly people are focused on like, oh, this is a mess. Like, this is unsustainable. Costs are going up for everybody. We just covered on Breaking Points today. Even for people who are on employer-sponsored plans, costs are just going up and up and up with no end in sight. Now, the average is $27,000 a year. Like, this is insanity. And right. And so even people like, the squawk box guys got to be like, well, yeah, something does need to be done. I don't think this is going in the right direction. It just proves the point that you can actually drive the narrative. You can actually put issues on the table. You can actually shape the landscape of a policy conversation. And obviously, like, Republicans have zero answers on health care, health insurance, health anything. Zero. And they just want to ignore it and screw people over and make up some nonsense about how this is all going to quote unquote illegal aliens.
You know who's shown that, Crystal, as dystopian and terrible as he is Donald Trump, right? Like, who would have thought that Donald Trump would be able to convince this country to adopt totally irrational tariff policy and tariff every country, including food products? And if you had told people like, well, the squawk box guys would never go for that. The NBC media would never go for that. They didn't. But he changed the entire conversation and brought the country at least 50% of it along with him. And yet the Democrats, when we propose like reasonable things, like, well, we should just extend national health insurance, Medicare for everyone and give dental, vision and benefits, we get all this pundit class saying, well, you can't convince the American people of that. The whole point of politics is persuasion.
That's right.
The whole point is to have a vision and to tell people what your vision is and try to get them there. And somehow our party thinks that the point of politics is to try to find through some scientific mean the consensus current public opinion. That is by definition weak. You're not a leader. And what the American people fundamentally want is leadership. I had a Republican in my office who said the way they poll, it has nothing to do with issues. They poll and they say, do you think Donald Trump is confident? Do you think he's strong? Do you think he is a strong leader? And we poll all these issues, whereas I think what people actually want is strong visionary leadership. And that's why I think like the Graham Plattner, it's like, yeah, good. He's standing up. He's being honest. He's moving forward. And I just think we have the wrong lesson of what moves people in politics.
I 100% agree with that analysis. 100% agree.
Congressman, let's talk a little bit about foreign policy. So it's well known that you're one of the best voices, if not the best voice in Congress on foreign policy. And I have to say, I personally have been tearing my hair out recently watching what's happening in Venezuela, off the coast of the Caribbean. Hey guys, just had an awesome conversation with Congressman Ro Khanna. You definitely don't want to miss it. We get into a whole bunch of different stuff: Epstein files, foreign policy, government shutdown, his fight on CNBC, Graham Plattner, Zoran, all that stuff. Sign up below and watch the full thing.